This video will provide more of a broken down process to thinking as you create the prose essay. Again, it is less about writing strategy and more on how to think in accordance with the rubric. The essay that will be used is linked in the description below. Or, when the essay is shown, you can pause the video and take a screenshot. Do not read the prompt or the passage just yet. Before showing my writing viewpoints for the prose fiction essay, I want to summarize the parts of the prompt. Okay, let's give details about the prompt using a 2021 exam so you know the expectations using the information given to you. The first few lines of the prompt give you the background on the text, which helps you in understanding the author. The final few lines of the prompt let you know the topic you will write about and be graded by using the rubric. Your thesis will tell the reader the argument you will prove. The passage is where you will research evidence to prove your argument. Then that sums up what is expected for you for your prose essay. Based on the argument and evidence, you are to comment on the author's purpose for the evidence and explain how the literary element or device assists with proving your argument. Students have 2 hours and 15 minutes to take the exam. Taking 5 minutes to sketch the prose, poetry, and literary argument prompts is around 90 seconds per prompt, which leaves 40 minutes left to complete an essay. That includes the proofreading. After sketching out all 3 prompts, then the students pick which essay they want to start on. Some students would start with the one essay they knew they can easily write. Some students would start with their hardest essay because they knew they could write the most on the easiest one. Go with the order that is more relaxing to you with the thinking process. Let me show you an example of a 90 seconds prompt. Now, to sketch the prompt, I mean read the directions and underline keywords that you need to keep in mind as you read the passage. Note possible literary devices that may be used in the text. I placed an asterisk next to the characterization device because I will not be focusing on that device for this example, but you can if you want. Now, if you finish the prompt in under 90 seconds, start marking up the first paragraph or check to make sure the verb tense or point of view is the same throughout the passage. You can see where the past tense endings and pronouns are highlighted. This is done for each of the prompts. On your screen, you can see about how much can be done in a 90-second time period. Oh, I wanted to let you know, these examples I'm showing you of markups and items, I'm emulating them from actual student material. Okay, I'm going to start using the pronoun I as though I did all of this, just to make it easier to explain. If you look on the right-hand side on the second sheet, you'll see where I actually wrote out thought processes of what was going on with the highlighted evidence for setting, flashback, point of view, imagery, and diction. But continuing on from where we stopped at the 90 seconds, since I've used 90 seconds to dissect my prompt, I'm only going to spend no more than 10 minutes to read the passage and highlight textual examples for flashback, point of view, and diction. I'm basically limiting my focus as I read to these 3 examples so that I'm setting a reason, I'm setting a purpose for why I'm reading. This helps when you have a text that is boring, not as interesting. If you've set your purpose, you're sort of making yourself a little bit interested in why you're reading. So as I'm going through the passage, I'm interested in finding examples for point of view, for flashback, and diction. Now, normally as you're reading, you want to mark up possible examples by writing the device that it represents. This would be an example shown with the simile, where just out of the blue I realized, oh, there's 2 similes here. Let me put those there just in case I want to change, or if I want to use those as examples later to support other literary devices chosen. The whole goal of finding the textual evidence is I'm looking for 3 pieces for each literary device that I want to use. If I can only find 6 pieces where 3 are for flashback and 3 are for point of view, and then I only find 2 for diction, then that helps. I have not wasted my time. I can at least focus on those 2 literary devices. If I know I want to write a 5-paragraph essay, then I want to try to see if I could, I'm reading for 4 different literary devices. That way it's giving me the option. I can drop one if I turn out to have 12 pieces of text evidence, 3 for each of the 4. But if I could only find 9, then I'm just going to, I haven't wasted my time. Then I could focus on the 3 literary devices that have 3 textual evidence. That's for a 5-paragraph essay. For this particular example, I'm going to focus on doing a 4-paragraph essay. If you do not think a 4-paragraph essay is sufficient for an AP exam, please see my video on the 4-paragraph essay. As I am reading paragraph by paragraph, I'm doing so in context of that paragraph. And I'll use the word context a lot because I do need to focus my reading according to the prompt, according to my chosen literary devices of point of view, diction, and flashback. Now, I don't know how much I can say this. Make sure you have at least 3 textual pieces of evidence to support each of the devices you want to talk about. Now, as I'm reading, yes, I see more examples for imagery. Yes, I see more examples for setting. But I need to narrow my focus to effectively and efficiently use my time. Definitely watch the time. With the 2 hours and 15 minutes, yes, you have 45 minutes for the essay. But again, how I taught my students, take the first 5 minutes and read through all 3 of your prompts, and then decide which one you want to start with. Before I even started the time drills with my students, to prove that 30 minutes was enough time to complete an essay, I demonstrated that I can write 3 full essays in a 90 minutes period. I started handwriting 1 essay on the whiteboard where I had the students timed once due to timing. I did not prepare for any of the essays, and I just wanted to emulate as much as possible what they would be going through during their tests. But I wanted to stress myself by I gave myself only 90 minutes to complete all 3 essays. One was prose, one was literary argument, and one was poetry analysis. If I can't do it, I'm not going to expect my students to do it. But once I demonstrated the ability to do so, after that, the students were less apprehensive about it. And I'll admit, my first essay I showed them as I did it, I purposely thought out loud what I was doing so they could understand what was going on in my head. After that, I began having unscheduled 45-minute time drills with the students. They were not aware of the drills, and I did so because it added to their stress. And then I made sure, on top of that, I made sure to grade the essays. And sometimes, half the time, the essays went for a test grade, and half the time they would go for a class grade or a homework grade. And they would not know which grading scale the essay would go for, so they had to automatically assume it was a test grade, it was a test grade, it was a test grade. And I did so to add to their stress. I wanted them to get comfortable with testing stress and realizing what they need to do in order to calm that stress, because oftentimes the little errors that can take you from a 4 for your evidence and commentary to a 3, or that can take your 3 from your evidence and commentary to a 2. They're often due to just little stressful mistakes you made that if you weren't so highly stressed, you would have caught that. You would have not done it in the first place. By the time my students took their exam, they were not worried over the essays. Granted, the half that were out for COVID issues, they were worried over the multiple choice part because they missed that half of that portion of the year where that was covered. Now, after 10 minutes, this is what your sketch could look like. Take some time to practice. Make sure you're timing yourself. Stick to the time. Do not give yourself extra seconds, extra minutes, or grace periods for, oh, well, I couldn't do it because of this. I couldn't, because on the test, you don't have that. Now, if you know you're getting the extra times for any form of learning aids, learning disabilities, things like that, take that in account. Then yes, you can give yourself grace, but that doesn't mean you should not just take your time just because you have the time. The link for this essay is below in the description if you have not already downloaded it. On the following views, you'll see the introductory paragraph slides. Well, you're going to see errors on it. This is a teaching strategy that I do and have learned early on to sort of empower my students to actively look and speak up to correct errors. Basically, I wanted them to get comfortable with correcting me because I will be correcting them. And I wanted a classroom atmosphere where they realize it's okay to be human. That and the fact of, if I'm correcting a student on something, another student will hear that and learn from that mistake. Likewise, if a student is catching me on an error, another student who may not have known that was a grammatical or structural error would learn from that. It was just my way of empowering them to continuously revise, edit, and improve their writing in case time runs out during the exam and they did not have enough time to proofread their essay at the end. So try not to get too upset over the obvious mistakes. The mistakes are there for a reason. Don't let the grammar genius inside of you hinder you learning a new method to AP Lit writing. The first sentence I want to write is the thesis. Here is the equation that I gave my students to use until they added more information and just wanted to become creative writers themselves. So, thesis sentence equals, in the passage from the novel title, comma, author's first name and last name uses literary element and literary element to examine characters. Make sure you see that apostrophe S. Put in an adjective to describe the response, and then add in a specific location time. In making sure I have a thesis that is preferred by the rubric, I use the template from the 6 W's of Prose video. I have my who, where, why, and how. I do not have my hook or my when. Looking at the additional notes of the rubric, I see that I could add a line of reasoning, and to make my thesis sentence defensible, I could add some evidence from the text that supports the thesis. Note that the items from the rubric have may and need not cite, but it does add a bit of security to get the 1 point by adding in those little details. For me to add a line of reasoning and minimal evidence, I am going to split my thesis into 2 sentences. Now I can see a possible hook in the word maturity. I still don't have my hook, but I can look at the word maturity and develop a hook. And I still don't have my when, but I can add that. But next, I'm going to focus on my hook. Now, I have a hooks video or how to start a paragraph video that show 5 different ways to start a paragraph. For this particular paragraph, I'm just going to give the definition to help me establish my hook. So based on the word maturity, and to help me establish a line of reasoning to help structure my essay, I am going to add the definition of maturity is an objective variable term that is dependent on the life experience of the individual. Next, now all I need to do is add my when. I do not have a when for my introduction paragraph. I have a where, it being a prank in a river, which also hints towards the culture that the event is a prank or a joke. I can't understand that it was during a prank, and that being the when, and at the river as the where. Yet, I want to show off my literary device knowledge in case I make a minor mistake or two on grammar or structure later. For the when, I will use this opportunity to make sure the thesis sentence is defensible. I am going to put the when for my introductory paragraph by looking back at my prompt notes. I see that I wrote flashback as evidence for proving my argument. I'm going to use the flashback as my evidence to prove the when. Since I'm on my last sentence, I am going to go ahead and revise or proofread what text I have. I'm going to do this now because as I write my body paragraphs, I'm going to continuously refer back to my theses, and I want to make sure that this is as perfect as possible to lessen the amount of errors as far as what I should be writing about. Right now, I'm no longer concerned about the rubric requirements for the theses. I'm just going to start revising. So I'm going to be rereading my prompt, and already I see that the prompt, compared to the prompt notes and what I wrote, the name of the novel is Breath, Not Breathe. The rest of the information I wrote looks correct as far as spelling. after reading my paragraph, I want to decide to add more clarity based on the events from the passage. So I want to change antics to reflections and actions. To focus my paper on the narrator per the prompt, I'm going to add an apostrophe S and change life experience in my definition to people in place of an event. Then I'll skim my text for more, just to check to see if I'm having any overused words, like if I'm seeing how being used twice in that paragraph, who being used twice in that paragraph. It's like I know when I'm speaking, I often use the word now, and that's annoying to hear, but I notice in my writing, I don't use it. So in my writing, there may be words I'm using more in it than I would be if I was speaking. I'm going to go ahead and add my flashback evidence for my win, and my revised paragraph becomes the text in orange. If you have watched my 6 W's of prose video, the difference between that video and this video is that I'm demonstrating the thought process or writing viewpoint broken down from notes to paragraph. In my 6 W's, it's broken down, but it's less about the thought process and more about the answering of the W's. My 6 W's of prose video has the body paragraph on point of view. This video here, I'm only going to focus on one body paragraph, which is the one on diction. Now, all I'm going to do now is just input the answers from the highlighted notes of my 10-minute sketching. I want you to notice how for the what, I would input quotes, but I also would, if it was a longer quote, I just go ahead and put the lines. So my evidence that will prove diction, I could look at lines 51 through 54 or lines 57 through 58, or I can use the quote, embarked on my mission or Pharaoh's shriek. I want to also notice that, hey, when I look just at my notes for diction, my how is saying there was giggling, guilt, sympathy, and contempt. As a writer, I'm saying those are contrasting emotions from loon to pike, which should help me later on proving maturity. Now, follow along as the answers take form into sentences. I simply answer the questions using the notes provided. With each answer, I want you to notice how I'm just not giving a simplistic answer or a general answer. I'm providing some form of explanation of why is an example of diction, or I'm explaining why the author is using it for diction. Now that we have drafted our thoughts from the text, I want to focus my sentences by adding more commentary or clarity to them. Since readers like writing that's active, I want to try to use verbs that are more action or active to encourage a more lively reading. I want to minimize writing with am, is, are, was, where, being, and being. Those are really linking verbs. I'm not saying not to use linking verbs because they do help show variety in your sentence structure. I just want to make sure my sentences have clarity and appear active. The questions for the body paragraphs for both the diction and the point of view, they're all the same. For prose, you can generally use the same W questions for all your prose. At this point, I'll check for wordiness or repetition. I notice that I have a few words appearing twice. That lets me know to only use those words maybe once more in my essay or not at all. For names, well, that cannot really be helped, but I can distance the sentences from each other and make sure that no sentences are ending with preposition and that I'm using the Oxford comma. These last two, the no prepositions at the end of sentences and using the Oxford comma, those are controversial grammar rules, but I always tell my students that you do not know the age of the person who's grading your essay. A person in their 80s can still work to grade papers. A person in their 70s can still work to grade papers. A person in their 60s can still work to grade papers. If they are staunch on their grammar rules that they've learned when they went to school, they could drop your evidence and commentary 4-point score to 3 points because there were grammar and mechanical errors, which, if you watch my rubric differences video, is justified in the additional notes section, which is highlighted in green. Plus, I have been on the other side of grading a district state exam. Granted, it's not an AP exam, but it was a district state exam, and I watched a 3-point score get downgraded to a 2 because the final judge stated that a high school student could not have a job and attend school based on his knowledge growing up. So that made the student's evidence of using his job skills, that made his evidence general, not specific. Granted, this was not an AP exam, it was for a state exam. Yet that student's final score was based on that judge's staunch background knowledge. So I leave it up to you, the writer, on whether you want to end your sentences with a preposition or not use the Oxford comma. The one thing that is going with using the Oxford comma is they can't ding you for putting a comma before a conjunction. To see the example of the other body paragraph, remember to view my 6 W's of prose video. As you start on the conclusion, reread your introductory paragraph for the who and the what. The W's, who, and what are here again. All this is a lot of self-checking here, but these two are for you to review your introductory paragraph again to make sure that your initial argument is still the same argument that you're going to conclude on for this paragraph. So when it's at the who are affected by the scene, you want to make sure the character or characters focused on in the theses are the same characters you wrote about throughout your body supporting paragraphs, and you need to just mention them here as well. Any extra characters written about are there specifically to support your argument, but you shouldn't have any extra details about those characters that do not just focus on supporting your argument. So I noticed that I do have Loon, I do have Pike, and I do have the woman. When it gets to the what occurred, focus specifically on your theses. Now, you need to really look at the adjective use because you have to now in your conclusion explain how the adjective is complex because the prompt states that it should be complex. Now, based on the notes, Pike understood the viewpoint of both the adult woman and Loon over the seriousness and non-seriousness of the prank. He was experiencing a dual rationality. Now, I can't right now think of another synonym for dual, but I can think of another word for complex. So that gives me an opportunity to let the reader know, listen, it was a complex rationality, but I don't want to just use the actual adjective from the prompt. I'm going to stick with multifaceted. And I'm not going to beat myself up over not being able to think of another synonym for dual, because I'm going to use dual later to explain why it was multifaceted. But that also, I don't want to waste precious seconds and minutes trying to find a perfect synonym, especially if this is like my first or second essay, because that means I have 2 other essays to work on, or I have 1 other essay to work on. Maybe when I finish writing those essays, I may, in the process of creating them, think of a great or better synonym, and then I can change it then, but I'm not going to focus on it right now. So, with the information about Pike, I'm going to write for my first sentence. The idea of pretending to drown was reasoned to be an amusing hoax by Loon, yet Pike witnessed the events with a multifaceted rationality of youthfulness, practical joking, and an insulted adult. So now I just need to go ahead and support this statement with examples, and these are not the same examples used in my body paragraphs. Then I'm going to try to explain those examples and the how and why Winton decided to use point of view in diction. To answer the when and where in the conclusion, I'll review my when and where answers in the body paragraphs. It's to simply to show how the character responded at the end of the passage, or where did the incident affect the character for the better or worse. Now, this may require some skimming of the text for you, but while you were writing your body paragraphs, it should have been deduced as you answered the W's for your 6 W's. Like when we look in the black rectangle, that point where Pike actually realized it's more fun to pull this prank than it is to stand by and watch while someone else did it, that is the actual moment when he's having that complex response. When we look at the when, we have from our body paragraphs, Winton's diction of referring to Loon's action over the farce of drowning contrasts with the diction used for Pike's thoughts and feelings of guilt and sympathy and contempt. And then from the other supporting paragraph, Pike was about to swim in a local river when a group of frantic females shouted for him to assist in recovering a drowned boy. The 2 purple rectangles are my evidence to my use of a dual observation here in the conclusion. Before looking at the how and why, verify that you are aware that there is a transitional thought that leads from your supporting body paragraph to your next supporting body paragraph. This method includes, again, a self-check for you to make sure you have this already somewhere hinted to in your body paragraphs, because it will help strengthen your chances to earn a minimum of a 3 for row category B, evidence and commentary. If you don't have it in there hinted to, then you're definitely going to at least give the answer to it here in your conclusion. So don't worry if you don't have the hint written. But let's go ahead and sum up the how and why of each of your examples to prove the adjective of your argument. Now for our how, our evidence from our supporting paragraphs, the diction referring to Loon's action over the drowning contrasts with the diction used for Pike's thoughts and feelings. And then from the other supporting paragraph, which you can see if you watch my 6 W's of prose video, the technique shows how Pike processed the urgent event analytically while others around him were emotional and distraught. Now, taking account of my evidence from my actual bodies paragraph, I can just sum up those two thoughts are actually saying, Winton gave Pike a dual observation for the reader to examine the scene at the river with the childish maturity of Loon and the maturity of the adult woman. This gives the answer to that transitional thought because you're answering the question, how is Pike reacting in both of the body paragraphs? And then what is the connection, which is the entailment part? Being that you're showing through the diction that he is emotional, that some people were emotional, that he's observing the females being emotional and distraught, but he's also, remember, he knows how Loon's thinking of understanding the practical joke that's supposed to be going on. And then he's recognizing that there are contrasting emotions going on where Loon thinks he's having fun at his prank, but the women are not seeing that as funny. So that duality is what's making him have a complex response, because you're taking an 11-year-old boy who's now understanding the adult mind. And I use that, if you read in the paragraph where I actually use quotes of, in the beginning, he's using the word crisis, riverside, panic, and mission. While at the end, after he understands Loon is pretend drowning, how he's able to explain to the woman it's easy to dive down and hold on. These were actually details from the text that I had in my notes. I didn't use all of my quotes in my body paragraphs. Remember, I said keep it around 3 or 4, and that's because it helps you at the end in your conclusion, especially during a stressful moment like taking this test, to know that you can insert that extra text to say, hey, I proved my point. You do not, and let me just say this, you do not want any of your quotes to be 2-line quotes from the text. This argument is supposed to be your voicing the argument, not you reusing words already stated. That is really frowned upon because it's considered, it's considered plagiarism after a point. So to not get hit for plagiarism, keep your quotes short. I tell my students, if it's going to the next line, it's too long. But I mean, granted, with certain papers, you can actually take whole stanzas or whole paragraphs within there, but then you're offsetting, you're using indents to actually show that, yes, it is a lot of text, but this is word from word, or somewhat of the words from the text you're referencing. This is a simple argumentative essay where you're writing on prose. You shouldn't need a whole line of quoted text, not an entire line. So be aware of that, please. Now, your why for the text is going to answer how your 2 literary devices are helping strengthen the writer's thought process using that specific adjective, dual. So we have for the why, Winton's diction or word choice demonstrates the difference in actions and reactions between Pike and Loom. Then we also have from the other paragraph, this first-person point of view allows the reader insight into why Pike acted the way he did during the situation. Taking those actual notes from our written body paragraphs, we can just sum up both point of view and diction support how maturity is dependent on the perspective. And I want you to notice how I didn't just take my sentences from the paragraphs and insert it into my conclusion. I took the knowledge, the thought process behind the notes, and then summed them up in my head what I wanted the reader to have determined based off my body paragraphs. And that's the end to the prose essay. I do suggest you view the 6 W's of prose to gain a deeper understanding of writing with the W's. Again, this video demonstrated how to apply the viewpoints stated in the 6 W's, but this video took it a little further where we went from the notes of the text and then made them into a paragraph. I do hope you recognize that within the process of creating these paragraphs, there were several steps for you to self-check and proofread your writing, not just for grammar and mechanics, but also according to the rubric requirements. Remember, the viewpoints I'm sharing are to help you increase your points while decreasing your time needed for revising and editing. Do you want to learn more on how to think while writing? Click on any of the videos you see here or below, post questions below, and I will respond or upload a specific video to demonstrate a clarifying answer. If you feel you've learned the thought process that helps you with writing, please click the thumbs up, or even better, share with someone else who you think would benefit to watching. And I definitely would appreciate it if you subscribed.